Josh Hasten here at Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. It is Monday, the 31st of December, 2018, the 23rd of Tevet, 5779. We start tomorrow, 2019. I don't celebrate this as New Year's myself personally. New Year's for the Jews was the 1st of Tishrei back in the fall. But for those who are celebrating going into a 2019, let it be a year of success and happiness and health and peace and only good things around the world. Thanks for joining us here on the Land of Israel Network. Of course, you can always get in touch with me. Josh at thelandofisrael.com is my email address. On Facebook, it's Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter at Josh Hasten. A lot going on in the world of politics here in Israel. I believe last week's show we already announced that elections were going to be held April the 9th. A new poll in this morning's Jerusalem Post from our good friend and colleague Gil Hoffman reveals that former IDF Chief of Staff Benny Gantz is seen by Israelis as almost as fit to be prime minister as the current prime minister, the incumbent prime minister Netanyahu, according to a new poll by the Midgam broadcast, and it came out on Sunday night, last night here in Israel. According to this poll, 36% said Netanyahu and 29% said Gantz were fit to serve as prime minister of the state of Israel. At this point, it is just sheer madness. You have so many new parties forming all over the place, on the right, on the left. But I think there's a long way to go until April the 9th, when parties will be joining with other parties. Other parties will be irrelevant at that point. A lot of stuff will still be in the works leading up to the election. On Saturday night, you had the party of Naftali Bennett, the Jewish Home Party, and Ayelet Shaked. They actually broke off and started a new party called Hayamin HaChadash, the new right-wing party. They took also MK Shuli Moalam Rafaeli. They broke off from the Jewish Home Party, and there was a press conference Saturday night, and we will have to see how many seats they're going to get with their new party. There are a lot of different I read in the paper this morning, the J Post, different polls coming out. Some say they'll get as many as 12 seats, some say 10, some say 8. But perhaps we'll have on the show in the near future leading up to elections different political analysts to help us understand the complicated situation, which is Israeli politics. It's not just Republicans and Democrats. You have all these different niche parties here in Israel. So what you do already have is parties which made up the former Jewish Home Party, including the National Union, slamming Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked. Agriculture Minister Uri Ariel told Army Radio that Bennett and Shaked lied to rabbis in order to get their permission to form the party. You now have MK Bezalel Smotrich, who perhaps is seeking to lead the new Beit HaYehudi, saying our goal is to unite religious Zionism so it will stand strong and prepared for the next election, bring a good result, and continue to represent the values religious Zionism has represented since the establishment of the state. Again, that's the old, or the Beit HaYehudi party, which is no longer being led by Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked. And then you have senior religious Zionist Rabbi Chaim Druckman saying he encouraged people to stick with Beit HaYehudi and to vote for them. Also in the news, and this is very significant, Chadashot News, that's Khan, reported that the Likud is seeking to lower the electoral threshold. The current percentage needed in order to have your party be in the Knesset is 3.25% of the vote. And the Likud wants to lower that. And that's because there's so many of these right-wing parties, including this new Hayamin HaChadash party, and they want to be able to form, at the end of the day, a right-wing coalition. Again, it remains to be seen. Will Naftali Bennett and Ayelet Shaked put their differences with Netanyahu and the Likud aside? Perhaps they'll be swallowed up by the Likud. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with that. I mean, but we know that over the years, in recent years, that Shaked and Bennett have not been getting along with Prime Minister Netanyahu. But when it comes to forming a coalition, there are strange allies which come together. So we'll have to see how that pans out. We'll have to see if the Likud is able to reduce that electoral threshold in order to keep the government right of center or right leaning. With that current threshold, 3.25, most cases you would need 4 seats in order to get into the Knesset, perhaps 3 seats. Any party dropping below the threshold would mean that the right would lose tens of thousands of votes and could lose its parliamentary majority. So again, Bibi wants these right-wing parties to make it. This is a mess, folks. The way it stands right now, this is a mess. And unfortunately, politics gets ugly and dirty. And I'm sure this election will be no different, even though everyone is appealing to each other to have a clean fight, if that's not an oxymoron. Anyway, Arutz Sheva reports leaders of the Jewish Home and the National Union Party decided on Saturday night to run together as one. So that is the Jewish Home, National Union, the right wing, if you will. They're going to be one list on the Knesset, again, without Bennett and Shaked. The decision was made at a meeting which took place in the home of Rabbi Druckman, who I mentioned earlier. He's the head of the Yeshivat Or Tzion and chairman of Yeshivot and Ulpanot B'nai Akiva, one of the leaders of religious Zionism. So I think that's enough. What do you think, Ben Bresky? Engineer extraordinaire, that's enough politics for now, at least. And we're actually here broadcasting in our Jerusalem studio, thanks to Binyamin Bresky. Without him, there's just no sound. Perhaps you saw these images on social media yesterday of this Jordanian trade union headquarters with an Israeli flag at the entrance so that everyone who walks into the building steps on an Israeli flag. Israel's foreign ministry, reported here by the Jewish press, has filed a protest with government officials in Amman and with the Jordanian embassy in Tel Aviv after Jordan's Minister for Media Affairs and Communications, I can't pronounce her name, Jumana Junabat, something like that, whoever was seen stepping on an Israeli flag. Jordan's attaché in Israel has also been summoned to Israel's foreign ministry for clarification. This incident took place at Jordan's trade union headquarters. Again, they painted the Israeli flag on the floor at the entrance to the building, invited passersby to step on it on their way inside of the building. This, of course, a deep insult to any country. Jordan's Prime Minister Omar Razaz decided he was not going to get involved in any of this. Excuse me, and he decided to go in through a side door and not step on it. But that is, I guess that is our peace with Jordan, the cold peace we have with the Jordanians. Of course, the cold peace we have with the Egyptians, but they are still stepping on the flags, the blue and white of the State of Israel over there in Jordan. Now, switching gears, I find, as a sports fan, I find this fascinating. Israeli research at the forefront here of the NBA, National Basketball Association, reported by Times of Israel over the weekend. Listen to this, a new study. Basketball teams that come from behind to tie a game do not have a greater chance of winning in overtime, according to, this is an Israeli study analyzing hundreds of NBA games. Researchers at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev in Beersheba published a study on hundreds of these games in the Journal of Economic Psychology, debunking theories of how psychological momentum in sports and in life leads to success. So in other words, when it comes to sports, you have a team that are down. They're down by several points. Comes the end of the game, somebody hits a game-tying three-pointer. Everyone's going crazy, sends the game into overtime. According to this study, just because a team was down and they happened to be the underdogs and they hit a game-tying shot and they went into overtime, that momentum from that incident, from that shot, I mean, there's psychology involved here. It's amazing. That does not prove that they are going to win the game just because they seem to have the momentum. So according to Dr. Elia Morlugev from Ben-Gurion, people talk about momentum as an indicator for success in business, sports, and politics. She is at BGU's Guilford Glacier Faculty of Business and Management, and this again came out on Sunday. However, after studying close to 900 tied games with fourth quarter comebacks over 11 NBA seasons, this is amazing, we found, she says, that regardless of momentum, teams with the home court advantage and a better season-long win-loss record were more likely to succeed in the 5-minute overtime period. In other words, the home team number one, the team that is better, that has a better win-loss record, has a better record, they most likely will win that overtime game, even if they blew a lead and the other team seemed to build momentum leading into overtime. I am fascinated by this. I don't know about you, but I think this is unbelievable. Potential explanations according to which the momentum of a comeback team could be offset by a more aggressive, focused, and motivated team that feels it was robbed of its win by being so exhausted that it loses its momentum, or by relaxing because the team feels it has achieved a key target by avoiding losing outright. In other words, the team that was favored feels that it was robbed of its win and gains extra motivation. That home team that has a better record. In the cases that were studied, that team that had the momentum apparently is exhausted. They feel like they got to a target, and then they don't play as hard in overtime. This is fascinating stuff. Ultimately, the researchers asked, why do people tend to associate NBA comebacks with psychological momentum, even though data does not support it? It seems intuitive to expect the comeback team to benefit from momentum, said Professor Azar. So perhaps when a team that closed the gap in the fourth quarter does win in overtime, it stands out more in people's memories and reinforces a common belief over time. I find this is fascinating. If you want to learn more, Ben-Gurion University of the Negev and their recent study on momentum involving 900 NBA games. I thought that was an amazing story. Switching gears once again, back down to the Gaza border. I mean, it's not been in the news as much in recent weeks, even though you've had this so-called Great March. Nowhere near the coverage as we've had in the last 6 months with the attempts to infiltrate into Israel, but it's still going on down there. The J-Post reports that incendiary balloons were found next to a kindergarten near a community in the Sdot Negev Regional Council here in Israel. A police bomb disposal unit was dispatched immediately. After several weeks of none of these kites, the police released a message asking the public to be on guard regarding suspicious objects, whether they're balloons or kites. I mean, again, a balloon which is attached to a bomb or some other type of dangerous device was found near a kindergarten here in Israel. Every one of these, this could have been a disaster. Each and every one of these is unacceptable, and we should not tolerate it. We should not transfer any goods into Gaza, even if it's somewhat slowed down. This should not be the way of life that kids who are tempted to pick up balloons could, God forbid, be seriously hurt as a result. Also reports of a rocket launched at some point over Friday night. I don't know. I did not get a notification on the Red Alert app, but there are reports that a rocket was launched and landed in an open area here in Israel. Again, the Hamas terror gangs, whether they're in Judea and Samaria or in Gaza, are still hard at work trying to destroy the Jewish state of Israel. And that will never happen. But we'll have to pay attention, of course, to the situation down in the south, as we are always paying attention to the situation in the north with more of these Hezbollah terror tunnels being discovered and destroyed by the IDF. The Knesset has approved 650 million shekels for Holocaust survivors. Knesset's Finance Committee approved a budget increase, according to the J-Post, of 650 million shekels for Holocaust survivors, meant to increase the monthly stipend survivors receive from the government. The committee also approved a budget of 1.7 billion shekel for the defense ministry. But, you know, there have been reports over the years, very, very difficult to accept or to acknowledge. There were reports over the years indicating that Jewish Holocaust survivors were getting more benefits, more allocations within Germany, those who either survived and went back to Germany or stayed in Germany than here in Israel. And that was always disturbing to hear. But this is a positive step taken by the Knesset, I guess on one of its last days of being the current 20th Knesset of Israel before the Knesset breaks up and then we go to elections. But this is definitely a positive development, allocating this money for Holocaust survivors. Finally, a BDS fail, no doubt. And it happens to be on the front page of today's paper as well, today's Jerusalem Post. Tourist number 4 million lands in Israel. Minister of Tourism Yariv Levin said on Sunday that the 4 millionth tourist arrived in Israel over the past weekend, marking an unprecedented number of tourists who arrived to Israel this year. Calling it the result, what he said was a revolution undertaken by the Ministry of Tourism. He said the minister said he's excited by this moment that proves Israel as an attractive tourist destination. Now, what this does, in fact, also prove is that the BDS Israel haters out there are losing. 4 million non-Israelis, 4 million tourists arrived at the borders of the state of Israel, whether by air or by land or by sea or however they got here. The majority, I believe, is from the U.S., also the former Soviet Union and Asia and all over the world. This is a BDS fail. No matter how you try to harm the state of Israel and badmouth the state of Israel, whether you are a so-called Jewish organization, and I use that term lightly, or whether you were just an anti-Israel, BDS, pro-BDS, Israel bashing and Israel hating group or country for that matter, and I could think of several in the EU that perhaps would fit in that category of supporting the boycott here in Israel. But this is a complete BDS fail. 4 million tourists this year. Think of how much money that brought in, whether you're talking about restaurants or hotels or tourist attraction sites or whatever it is. 4 million tourists, the greatest year in tourism since the establishment of the State of Israel 70 years ago. So on that note, I think we are going to call it a day. We're going to call it a show here on Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. My name is Josh Hasten. Again, as the weeks progress and as we get closer to another election here in Israel for the 21st Knesset, this coming April, we'll have more and more election coverage. I know that, for example, our good friend Jeremy the Man Sultan is going to be on the broadcast here in weeks ahead as we get closer to elections. I would love to have Gail Hoffman on as well, colleague and co-host and host rather here on the Land of Israel Network. Have him on to get his analysis from inside the halls of Knesset and others about another historic election here. Where what will the future hold? What will the future government look like? So we're going to get all to that in the days and weeks ahead. And of course, keep you abreast of everything going on in the news here in Israel as we head into the year 2019, saying goodbye to the year 2018 for those who commemorate the Gregorian calendar and celebrate the new year. That's going to be it for today. Again, shout out to Benjamin Bresky, engineer extraordinaire, Tabitha Epstein, who gets all of the shows up. And without them, we could not do what we do here. And I speak for all of the hosts on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Again, my name is Josh Hasten. Get in touch with me during the week. It is Josh at thelandofisrael.com, on Facebook, Joshua Hasten, and on Twitter at Josh Hasten. Signing out for December 31st, 2018 from beautiful Jerusalem. It's also the 23rd of Tevet, 5779. Most importantly, wherever you are in this wonderful, wonderful world of ours, between now and when we speak again, please God, next Monday, everyone out there, be safe. Shalom, shalom from beautiful Jerusalem.
Who are we as a people? Who are we as a nation? What does it mean to be a Jew in the land of Israel, as a Jew in Judea? What is our message to the world? We're finally back in our land, and we get to ask these questions.
Ezrat Hashem, we're going to make Judea and Samaria an issue for the entire world, to know that the Jews have a place in the world.
Israel Inspired with Aria Bromwoods and Jeremy Gimpel on the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com.